Every Friday night at 7:47 p.m., apartment 4B ordered the same pizza. Large pepperoni, extra cheese, Diet Coke. And every Friday night, 19-year-old Jake Morrison climbed 4 flights of stairs to deliver it, knowing he was about to walk into the worst smell he'd ever experienced. It wasn't garbage, it wasn't death, it was something else. Something that made every other driver at Tony's Pizza refuse the route. "I'm not going to 4B again," Marcus, the senior driver, had said 3 months ago. "That place reeks like a chemical plant. Let the new kid handle it." So Jake handled it, every week, for 6 months. The old man who answered the door was always polite, always paid exact change, always tipped exactly $3. Never $2.50, never $3.50, always $3 even. "Thank you, son," he'd say in a voice like gravel. "Same time next week?" Jake would nod and try not to breathe through his nose. The smell hit you like a wall, sharp, chemical, overwhelming, like someone was cooking cleaning supplies. But tonight was different. Tonight, when Jake knocked, nobody answered. He knocked again. Silence. The smell was stronger than ever, seeping under the door like fog. Jake had a choice. He could leave the pizza, collect his tip later, and get out of that hallway. Instead, he tried the doorknob. What Jake found inside apartment 4B wasn't just the source of the smell. It was a love story, 50 years in the making, a family secret that had been buried under shame and silence, and the reason his own grandfather had abandoned his family when Jake was 2 years old. Because the old man lying unconscious in the kitchen floor, surrounded by dozens of bubbling pots and handwritten recipe cards, wasn't just another customer. He was Jake's grandfather, and he'd been trying to cook the same meal for 15 years. Hold on. Before I tell you what Jake found in those pots, before I explain the $3 tip and why his grandfather disappeared, I need to say something. Right now, someone in Singapore is listening to this story about a pizza delivery in Chicago. Someone in Trinidad is hearing about apartment 4B. This story about a grandmother's recipe is traveling across every time zone on Earth. That's what Story Buddy is about. Connecting us through the stories that remind us love takes many forms. So drop a comment right now. Where are you listening from? What time is it there? Do you have a smell that reminds you of someone you love? And if you believe that sometimes the people who seem the most lost are actually searching the hardest for home, hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because what Jake discovers next, it's going to change how you see loneliness forever. Jake Morrison worked at Tony's Pizza because college was expensive and his mother couldn't help him pay for it. She tried, God knows she tried, but raising a kid alone while working 2 jobs leaves not much room for college funds. Jake understood. He'd understood since he was old enough to see her counting quarters at the grocery store. What Jake didn't understand was why his father left when he was 2, or why he'd never heard from any of his father's family. His mother just said they were complicated people and left it at that. Tony's Pizza was Jake's 3rd job. Mornings at the campus bookstore, afternoons tutoring middle schoolers, evenings delivering pizzas to people who tipped in singles and looked at him like he was invisible. But not apartment 4B. The old man always looked Jake in the eye, always said thank you, always asked about his night like he actually cared about the answer. And that tip, $3 exactly, every single time. It was something deliberate about it, something specific, like it meant something Jake couldn't understand. "Why $3? Jake had asked him. The old man's face had gone soft. That's what it cost back then, a whole meal. $3 could feed a family if you knew how to stretch it. Jake had no idea what back then meant, or why it mattered, but the way the old man said it, like it was the most important thing in the world, stuck with him. The smell, though, that was harder to forget. It hit you the moment you reached the 4th floor, chemical and sweet at the same time, like someone was boiling cough syrup mixed with paint thinner. "What is that?" Jake had asked Tony one night. "Who knows? Probably some kind of hoarding situation. Maybe he's making drugs. Just deliver the pizza and get out."
But Jake didn't think it was drugs. Drugs didn't smell like food gone wrong. This smelled like cooking. Bad cooking. Desperate cooking. Tonight, the hallway was empty except for Jake and the smell. He knocked again. "Pizza delivery?" Nothing. Jake pulled out his phone to call Tony, then stopped. The old man was probably in his 80s. What if he'd fallen? What if he was hurt? He tried the doorknob. It turned. The apartment door swung open, and the smell hit him like a physical force. His eyes watered immediately. "Sir, are you okay?" Jake stepped inside. The living room was sparse but clean, a single recliner facing a small TV, a card table with one chair. On the table, a framed photograph of a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She looked familiar. Something about the shape of her face, the way she smiled. Jake had seen that smile somewhere else. "Sir?" The kitchen was where the smell was coming from. Jake rounded the corner and found him. The old man was on the floor, unconscious but breathing. Around him, 6 pots bubbled on the stove, filling the air with steam and that overwhelming chemical smell. But what Jake saw next made him forget about calling 911. The kitchen walls were covered in recipe cards, hundreds of them, all handwritten in blue ink, and they were all for the same thing. Rosa's arroz con pollo, take 1. Rosa's arroz con pollo, take 2. Rosa's arroz con pollo, take 47. Each card had notes scrawled in the margins. Too much cumin, not enough saffron, still wrong. She wouldn't recognize this. Jake called 911, then knelt beside the old man and checked his pulse, steady but weak. While he waited for the paramedics, Jake looked around the kitchen. Every cabinet was filled with spices, expensive spices, saffron that cost $30 an ounce, specialty rices imported from Spain. And on the refrigerator, a single newspaper clipping, yellow with age. The headline read, "Local woman dies in car accident, leaving behind husband and young son." The photo showed the same woman from the living room. Her name was Rosa Morrison. Morrison, Jake's last name. The woman in the photo wasn't just familiar, she was his grandmother, the grandmother he'd never met because his grandfather had supposedly abandoned the family when Jake was 2 years old. But this man hadn't abandoned anyone. He'd been here, alone, for 15 years, trying to recreate his dead wife's recipe, trying to remember the taste of home. And every Friday, without knowing it, Jake was delivering pizza to the grandfather who'd been grieving too deeply to stay.
The paramedics stabilized him. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, probably hadn't eaten a real meal in days. "Are you family?" one of the EMTs asked Jake. Jake looked at the unconscious old man, at the weathered hands that had tipped him $3 every week, at the face that looked like an older version of his father's face. "Yes," Jake lied. "He's my grandfather." At the hospital, Jake sat in the waiting room holding the framed photo he'd taken from the apartment. His grandmother, Rosa Morrison. His phone rang. His mother. "Jake, where are you? You missed dinner." "Mom," Jake said slowly, "tell me about Dad's father." Silence on the other end. "Jake, why are you asking about that?" "Please, just tell me." His mother sighed, the kind of sigh that carries years of pain. "His name was Angelo Morrison. When your grandmother, Rosa, died in that accident, he couldn't handle it. Started drinking, started disappearing for days at a time. Your father was only 10. Angelo would come home smelling like cooking gas and chemicals, said he was trying to make Rosa's recipes, but everything came out wrong. It got so bad that neighbors complained to child services." "What happened to him?" "Your father went to live with my parents. Angelo chose the bottle over his son. We never heard from him again." Jake looked at the photo, at Rosa's kind eyes. "Mom, what if you're wrong? What if he wasn't drinking? What if he was just trying to cook?" "Honey, what's this about?" "I found him, Mom. I've been delivering pizza to him for 6 months, and he's not an alcoholic. He's just a man who's been trying to make his wife's arroz con pollo for 15 years, and he can't get it right because he never learned to cook with love. Angelo Morrison woke up 3 hours later. Jake was sitting beside his bed, still holding the photograph. "Rosa?" Angelo whispered, seeing the frame. "No, sir, it's Jake, your pizza delivery guy." Angelo's eyes focused. "Jake, you came." "Sir, I need to ask you something. Are you Angelo Morrison?" The old man's face crumpled. Who told you?" "Your son. My father. His name is David Morrison." Angelo sat up so fast the heart monitor started beeping. "David? My David? I'm your grandson, sir." Angelo started crying, not the quiet tears of an old man, but the desperate sobs of someone who'd been holding back 15 years of grief. "He hates me," Angelo whispered. "I abandoned him. I chose the grief over my boy." "You didn't abandon him," Jake said. "You were trying to cook for him. Mom told me. You were trying to make Grandma Rosa's arroz con pollo." Angelo looked at Jake like he'd spoken a foreign language. "You know about the cooking?" Jake pulled out his phone and showed Angelo a photo he'd taken of the kitchen. The recipe cards, the pots, the organized chaos of a man trying to recreate magic. "Take 147, Jake read from one of the cards. "Still too salty. Rosa would be disappointed." Angelo closed his eyes. She made it perfect every time. Never measured anything, just knew. After she died, David would ask me to make it, every Sunday. I kept trying, kept failing. The smell got so bad the neighbors complained. Social services came. They said I was an unfit parent. They said David deserved better. "So you left." I thought if I could just learn to make it right, I could come back. I could be the father he deserved. But every week, every month, every year, it never tasted like hers. Jake leaned forward. "Grandpa Angelo, can I tell you something?" Angelo nodded. "I've been eating pizza for 6 months, but I never asked you if you wanted to eat with me. I never asked if you were lonely. I just took my $3 and left." Angelo smiled through his tears. $3. That's what a whole family meal cost when David was little, when we were happy. "I know, but I think the recipe isn't the problem." "What do you mean?" Jake thought about his mother counting quarters, about working 3 jobs to pay for college, about the photo of Rosa smiling like she had all the love in the world to give. I think Rosa's arroz con pollo tasted perfect because she made it for people she loved. And maybe you can't recreate that flavor when you're cooking alone." Angelo stared at Jake for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 15 years, he smiled a real smile. "Would you like to learn how to make it? The real way? With Dad? With family?" Stop. Just stop for just a second. If you felt that punch to the gut when Jake realized he'd been visiting his grandfather all along, if you felt the weight of 15 years of misunderstanding, then you know why this story had to be told. Someone in Australia just gasped. Someone in Mexico is crying. Someone in Germany is thinking about their own family recipe that nobody makes anymore. This moment is happening all over the world right now. Before we continue, before we find out if Jake can reunite his broken family, hit that subscribe button if you're not already part of the Story Buddy family, and tell me in the comments, what recipe reminds you of home? What smell brings back memories? Because what happens when Jake's father learns his dad never abandoned him, that he never stopped cooking for him? That's the part of the story that'll stay with you forever. Jake called his father from the hospital parking lot. "Dad, I need you to come to St. Mary's Hospital." "Are you hurt? What happened?" "I'm fine, but I found someone who's been looking for you for 15 years. The silence stretched so long Jake thought the call had dropped. "Jake, what are you talking about?" "Your father, Angelo.
He's here, and he's not who Mom told us he was. Jake, my father is dead to me. Dad, he's been trying to cook Mom's arroz con pollo for 15 years. He never stopped cooking for you." Another long silence. "That's impossible." "Room 314. He's waiting." When David Morrison walked into room 314, he was 50 years old. He had gray at his temples and worry lines around his eyes. He owned a small accounting firm and given Jake everything he could. But when he saw his father, he became 10 years old again. "Papa?" Angelo looked up from his hospital bed, seeing his son's face, and whispered the same words he'd said every Sunday for 10 years. "¿Quieres que te haga arroz con pollo? Do you want me to make you rice with chicken?" David broke down completely. "I thought you hated me," David sobbed. "I thought you chose drinking over me." "Never," Angelo whispered. "I chose grief over healing. I chose memory over present, but I never, ever chose anything over you." Jake watched his father and grandfather hold each other for the first time in 15 years, and he understood something fundamental about love and loss, and the way grief can look like abandonment when you're too young to understand it. "There's something else," Jake said quietly. Both men looked at him. "I want to learn the recipe, the real one, Rosa's arroz con pollo." Angelo smiled. "It takes 3 people to make it right." "Why 3? 1 to cook with love, 1 to taste with memory, 1 to eat with gratitude." David wiped his eyes. "When?" "This Sunday?" "This Sunday."
3 weeks later, Jake knocked on the door of apartment 4B, but this time he wasn't carrying pizza. Angelo opened the door, and the smell that hit Jake wasn't chemical or overwhelming. It was saffron and garlic, and the kind of love that takes 15 years to perfect. "Listos?" Angelo asked. "Ready?" David emerged from the kitchen, wearing Rosa's old apron. "The rice is starting." Jake looked around the apartment. The recipe cards were gone from the walls, replaced by photos, 3 generations of Morrisons. Rosa in her wedding dress, David at his college graduation, Jake at his high school graduation that Angelo had missed. But the most important photo was new, a Polaroid from last Sunday. 3 men in a kitchen, laughing, covered in flour. "Grandpa, I have something for you." He handed Angelo an envelope. Inside, $3 bills. "My tip, from all those Fridays." Angelo stared at the money. "Jake, you don't have to." "It's not payment," Jake smiled. "It's the price of a family meal, for 3 people." Angelo looked at his son, then at his grandson, then at the photo of Rosa on the counter. "She would have liked this," he whispered. David put his arm around his father's shoulders. "She would have loved this." And for the first time in 15 years, Rosa's arroz con pollo tasted exactly the way it was supposed to. Like home. Before you go, before you return to your own family, your own kitchen, your own memories, I want you to understand what just happened. For the last hour, someone in Tokyo and someone in Toronto experienced the same emotions. Someone in Mumbai and someone in Madrid felt the same hope for this family. Right now, across every continent, people are thinking about recipes they learned from their grandmothers, about family members they've lost touch with, about love that looks like cooking. That's the power of Story Buddy. We don't just tell stories, we reconnect hearts. So here's what I'm asking. If this story made you think about your own family recipe, if it made you want to call someone you haven't spoken to in too long, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Join our global family of people who believe in second chances. And tell me in the comments, what's your family recipe? What dish brings you home? Are there any relationships in your life that need the kind of healing Angelo and David found?
Next week, we have the story of a school crossing guard who noticed the same little girl walking alone every morning and how her simple act of kindness exposed a network of neglect that saved 17 children. Remember, love doesn't always look like love when you're grieving. Sometimes it looks like trying to cook the same meal for 15 years. Sometimes it looks like delivering pizza to a stranger. Sometimes it looks like coming home. Thank you for spending this hour with the Morrison family. I'm your story buddy. See you in the next one.